Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you today with 2023 Free Comic Book Day Uncanny Avengers #1. And I personally am very disappointed in this book. In a sense, they brought back the Uncanny Avengers XMen team in order to try to show coexistence between humans and mutants, kind of like what Jeff Lemire, was it Jeff Lemire? Yeah, Jeff Lemire was trying to do after his run on Uncanny X-Force, which, if you've read that run, other than when they tried to start trying to tie it into Axis, was an excellent read. This, not so much. Now, don't get me wrong, the artwork's great. Let's talk about who made this book real quick. Can't remember where the credits were. Gary Duggan, writer. Joshua Cassera, artist. Marty Garcia, colors and artist. VC's Clayton Cowles, letter. Tom Mueller with Jay Bow doing the design. There's everyone else working by the book. And X-Men was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So as I said, the artwork is actually pretty good. Don't get me wrong, I would rather see something like Dave Cockrum or John Byrne. But, decades later, they're going to use more digital art. And that's kind of what you see here. Now, if you don't remember, what was that event called? Destiny of X or something like that. Mystique finally brings Destiny back. And I just kind of noped out after that because I was hoping that Destiny was going to burn Krakoa to the ground because I'm going to be honest with you, the Krakoan era of X-Men, I absolutely cannot stand it. The X-Men do not feel like X-Men, and I'm tired of this constant Hellfire Gala, and that's like the biggest thing, and I don't care. After Destiny of X was when I kind of really stopped reading X-Men books. Apparently Cyclops not faked his death, that he died in front of people, and then he came back, or to keep it secret, they tried to make something called Captain Krakoa, which is this armor that you see in this thing. But then apparently the cat got out of the bag that mutants are essentially immortal with being able to be brought back to life with cloning technology, and so everyone's trying to fight over that, and yeah, all sorts of stuff. This guy comes in and tries to infect this place where the Hellfire Gala is going on. And it was one thing that I will say, it was a treat to see Cyclops in his OG 90s uniform. But when you read this, even though apparently, they're trying to revive Uncanny Avengers, the X-Men are not the X-Men to me in this series. I know a lot of people may say, well, what about Utopia? Well, at least with Utopia, they were trying to find a safe haven for their people, but they were still welcoming of other people, as where Krakoa is mutants only. And even their younger generations are making fun of humans and talking down to them, and that just is like the antithesis of Xavier's dream. So this guy, he's kind of like a suicide bomber. He wants to come in and stage the mutants as something as a hostile entity so that they can infiltrate Krakoa. But Scott tries to stop him, and something happens. It leaves you on a cliffhanger, literally, at the end of this series, but this guy hijacks the Captain Krakoan armor, and it's cool design. Like I said, I love the artwork, looks great. But it's like we're not treading any new ground. I don't see anything new in this series. And then because it's Free Comic Book Day, they, of course, switched this. And I think this is Jonathan Hickman. They're supposed to be on Capitol Hill. And they're talking about the mutants and what they're able to do, how they're a foreign nation, and they're just able to come and go to America. And the rest of the world is when they want. And he's like, there's a group of them that terraform Mars. They're the most powerful nation on Earth. We need to stop being stupid. And this is where Hickman ties in with the Captain Krakoa. And then we get a tie-in with Steve Rogers. And here the artwork to me was just very boring. Like him riding on his motorcycle, not dynamic at all. Or when he says, my bike's off balance, it's pulling to the left. It should have been more dynamic. That is, to me, is just a very flat shot, very boring. The colors are good, don't get me wrong. But just look at these paneling. It's just very boring. It's not helping to tell the story. It just looks like someone looked at a 3D model. Now here, real quick, I will say this where they do the Dutch angle like this, looking up at one of the New York bridges and the explosion, yeah, okay, like, whoa, what's going on? And then the underwater fight where there's the Orcish, if y'all remember the Orcish, if you go back and read House of X and Powers of 10, they want to destroy mutants. And they've been stopped. They tried to bring in, what was it? There's the girl, I think her name's Omega Sentinel or something like that, and then they bring back, oh god, now I can't remember his name. Nimrod. So you can see that there's still a threat. And we get a moment with him and Rogue, which is kind of cool, but everything starts to tie in with the last two stories. And then we get one where they're Deadpool's family. I know her name's Ellie. I can't remember her name. But again, it ties in with the rest of the story and what are these Sentinels about. And I don't care. I don't care. In the last story, this begins the fall of X, which this is why I'm hoping beyond hope that the Krakoan era of X-Men will end and kind of get back to something that feels a little more like what the X-Men stood for, and I'll give you another example. So all the younger mutants, like Pixie and all them, they make fun of the humans, look down to them. And even some of the older ones are starting to kind of get that mindset. As we're back in the day, even if you weren't a mutant, if you were just someone that needed help, you were a friend, or you were someone that was oppressed, like Warlock. He wasn't a mutant, he was an alien, but he found asylum and eventually joined the New Mutants. It didn't matter because Charles Xavier had a big heart and cared for people, and Magneto did when he wouldn't let his evilness take over his soul. So you can kind of see how this just does not feel like the X-Men. And it even shows, like, we haven't finished the series because I'm so fed up with it, but the Fantastic Four versus X-Men, Zdarsky does a good job with what that series is, but it just shows how Cyclops and all them are trying to take, what's Reed's son's name? Richard. Now they're just trying to take him against his will. Like, he wants to go, but Reed's like, he's not old enough. When he's old enough, he can decide if he wants to go Krakoa or not, but they're like, you don't get to make this decision. And it's like, yeah, he does. It's kind of his kid. So this doesn't feel like the X-Men. I mean, for goodness sake, for the longest time, Magneto's second in command, if you want to kind of give it a title, was Stevie, the dance instructor. I cannot remember her last name, but she kind of mentored Kitty, and she helped mentor the New Mutants, and she kind of helped Magneto when he started to fail, when Empath was starting to screw with his head. So, and it does not feel like the X-Men that we've known for decades and decades. The artwork, it's kind of all over the place because it's different artists. That first one was decent enough, but I don't know. I want more from the X-Men than what Krakoa has to offer. And for me, it just is not offering enough for me to want to continue buying X books. If you guys have any that you might recommend, like, I would suggest maybe reading the beginning of Benjamin Percy's Wolverine and X-Force run. It was entertaining, but the rest of the books, not so much. That's why I've kind of stopped reviewing them, because I've lost interest. But I picked this one up on a whim, hoping maybe. But if you guys have any inklings on what's going to happen with the Fall of X, let me know. I'm interested. If there's going to be a battle between them and humanity, and maybe see if things can kind of get brought back to some sort of status quo. I mean, you got to shake things up to keep stories interesting, but not when you just completely change the dynamics of what the characters initially stood for. Then you're starting to get a little too far off the mark. But guys, if you've enjoyed this, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if they have any leftover free comic book days, because I got mine a week later because I couldn't make it to free comic book day, because sometimes they'll have these laying around, or wherever it is you like to pick up your comics and action figures. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little Krakoan bell next to subscribe, it really helps the club, and you get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking to you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.